The next topic we want to talk about is pure competition. Now, pure competition has four characteristics that kind of define it as a purely competitive firm, as a firm that exists in a purely competitive industry. The first characteristics is that it is a homogeneous, or it produces a standard good. A homogeneous good or a standard good is a good that cannot be differentiated or distinguished from its counterpart. I have two highlight markers up here, exactly the same size, exactly the same color. With just looking at them and no imperfections, you would not be able to tell which of these was better. Therefore, that is a homogeneous good. If we took 2 ears of corn, perhaps yellow corn, same size, same diameter, no blemishes, you would not be able to tell me which of those goods would be better than the other. They are homogeneous. They are exactly the same as their counterpart. In 1990, when we went into the Persian Gulf during the Persian Gulf War in 1990, we had an oil embargo against Iraqi oil, although we still imported Kuwait oil. If someone were to run over into Baghdad, take a cup of Iraq oil, run back to Kuwait, go on the ship, pour that oil into the oil tanker, there would be no way of saying this is the Iraq oil versus this is the Kuwait oil. Therefore, this is a good that is homogeneous. There's no way of distinguishing it. That's the first characteristic. The second characteristic is that there are hundreds and hundreds of sellers, and each seller they are all producing the same good. All the sellers are producing the exact same good. However, each individual seller is only producing a very small amount of total production. In other words, if we take wheat, if we have the good called wheat, we might have 1,000 wheat farmers. Each wheat farmer is producing 100 bushels of wheat, and therefore our total, that's not a dollar sign, excuse me. Our total market of wheat is 100,000. Our total market of wheat is 100,000 bushels. But each individual person is only producing a very small amount of that. And if one of these farmers decides, well, I think I'm going to I want to raise the price people are paying for wheat. So therefore, instead of me bringing 100 bushels to market, I'm only going to bring 98 bushels to market. And therefore, he or she, that particular farmer, will withhold 2 bushels. Well, when we think of actually someone withholding 2 bushels out of a total of 100,000 bushels, those 2 bushels are really insignificant to the total amount of bushels of wheat that we have. And therefore, what we have is we have hundreds and hundreds of sellers producing wheat, but the total supply of wheat is huge. But each particular farmer is only producing a very small amount of the wheat. Therefore, he or she cannot increase or influence the price of wheat by withholding any supply. Thirdly, our third characteristic is that it is easy entrance and exit. In other words, that there are no legal barriers, technological barriers that you have to enter this particular industry. If you want to be a wheat farmer, all you need to do is go out and get some wheat seeds, plant the wheat seeds, water them, give them sunshine, whatever it is, and you are a wheat farmer. If you don't want to be a wheat farmer anymore, simply pull the plants out of the ground. There are no legal, technological, ownership of resource problems in this particular situation. And finally, A firm that is purely competitive is a price taker. This particular firm must take the price the market will pay. It cannot adjust its price. It cannot change its price. Again, the reason it is a price taker is that because we have so many sellers, each contributing a very small portion of total output. And therefore, no one particular seller can influence the market by withholding supply. Because their withholding supply is just very insignificant to the total amount. So this is a very important concept that we have to get across, that we have to understand in a purely competitive firm, in a purely competitive industry, that particular firm is a price taker. It cannot change its price in order to sell more. I have up here a couple of columns. I have the price of the good that we have. We'll say wheat since we're talking about wheat. I have the price of the good that we're talking about, the quantity demanded, the total revenue. Remember, total revenue is price times quantity. And then I have another column up here called MR, which stands for marginal revenue. And again, marginal simply means extra. The extra revenue that I will get, total revenue is the amount of money a firm brings in. So therefore, marginal revenue is the extra revenue that I get from selling the extra unit. Okay? So in this situation, I have my price is $131, the quantity demanded is 0, my total revenue is 0. At a price of $131, my quantity demanded is 1, my total revenue is $131. So all we need to do, if we wanted to see this, is at 1 unit, my total revenue is $131. At 2 units, my total revenue is $262. At 3 units, my total revenue is $393. And therefore, I can simply draw a supply curve, a total revenue curve, representing my total revenue. But there's an interesting factor here that we have to take a look at. The extra revenue that I receive from 0 to 1 is $131. In other words, when nobody bought anything, I had 0 in my pocket. You come up and say, I want 1 bushel of wheat. In order for me to give you that bushel of wheat, you have to give me $131. You think, well, gee, I want a 2nd bushel of wheat. I tell you, okay, you have to give me a total of $262 for 2 bushels of wheat, or I'm going to put into my pocket an extra, or my marginal revenue is $131. Think to yourself, well, gee, I'm going to buy a 3rd bushel of wheat. Well, you have to give me a total of $393 now, but the extra amount you have to give me over the 2nd unit is $131. And if we were to graph, excuse me for a moment, at each price, at each level, my marginal revenue is the same, and it's the same as my price. So my marginal revenue in this situation, in a purely competitive firm, is equal to my price. Marginal revenue is equal to my price in a purely competitive firm. Marginal revenue is equal to price, and you will demand that good at $131. So therefore, in a purely competitive firm, marginal revenue is equal to price. That is also equal to my demand. In a purely competitive firm only. And if I were to graph my marginal revenue, in order to buy the first one, I have to give you $131. In order to buy the second one, I have to give you an extra or a marginal $131. The third one, I have to give you an extra $131. So therefore, this is my marginal revenue, which is equal to my price, which is equal to my demand. And as we learned in an earlier chapter on elasticity, this is a perfectly elastic demand curve. This is the price that I will pay for wheat. I won't pay any more because you do not have the power to raise price by withholding supply, because there's so many people that one person's total supply is insignificant to the total amount. You don't have to charge me less because you can't supply all that is demanded at that price. So therefore, in a purely competitive industry, my marginal revenue is equal to my price and is equal to my demand. This is an extremely important concept, and we have to get that understood right now, that this marks the demand, this marks the primary characteristic of a purely competitive firm. If you have any questions about this, put them on discussion board, email me them, and I will in turn get back to everybody. I also ask other students to do the same. Thank you very much, and have a good day.